guys, welcome back to the greenhouse. So today I'm going to be talking about my favorite plants from the past year, the ones that have kind of just like never let me down, super easy plants that I would recommend to pretty much anyone, and then my worst. So those are going to be plants that I've actually gotten rid of from my collection or that I plan to get rid of. So this one's going to be a little chattier than usual. Grab something to drink or a snack and let's get into it. So let's start with the worst category. We're starting here because I just want to get like the negative out of the way. These are plants that I've gotten rid of over the past year, so I'm ready to just kind of leave them behind for good. The first one is going to be Calesia repens bianca. This plant I have had 2 or 3 different times. So I get it because I think it's so pretty. It annoys me, so I get rid of it. Couple months pass and I think, why did I get rid of that? Maybe I should try that again. Get another one over and over again, right? So the reason I don't like this plant, it always looks so pretty in its little nursery pot when you first get it. And I'm guessing that's just because of the conditions that it's kept in at the nursery, right? But even in the greenhouse where it's warm, it's humid, the growth habit is gross. There's something about the way that it grows that just, I don't know, it gets leggy. It gets like, it'll die off kind of at the base, and then I'm constantly having to replant the stems, and I find that super annoying. It just, as it grows out, it's just ugly. I'm not a fan. So super pretty at first, but then once it starts growing out, it's like, why? I don't want this anymore. Okay, the second plant that is on my worst list for 2020. This is going to be controversial. Okay, because it's not a plant, it's an entire genus. And the genus is Hoya. Don't hit me. Okay, I didn't get rid of all my Hoya. I don't hate all Hoya. My problem with Hoya is they are super slow growers for the most part, and when they do take off, they just get wild, and I don't necessarily love that growth habit. I don't really love that they put out these crazy long vines and then you have to wait for them to produce leaves. I don't like that there's so many variations of each species that I don't know exactly what I have in my care. Not that it really changes the care of the plant that much. I mean, a lacanosa variation is a lacanosa variation. You're going to treat it the same way as most right? So it's not so much like not knowing how to care for it. I just like to know what I have. And for whatever reason, it super bothers me to have a variation of a plant and not be quite sure what it is. And then it's so hard to get them to flower in order to confirm the species. It just annoys me. I got rid of a lot of really pretty Hoya this year. Some caryi, some variegated caryi, reverse variegated caryi, a really pretty reverse variegated obovata, which I actually really love the way that plant looked. But again, it was just growing a little wild, taking up a lot of room, but not growing fast enough for me to like propagate it, which I find annoying. I mean, I love big, lush, gorgeous plants, but I also really love chopping plants up. I mean, I've found over the past year that my inclination with my collection is to chop them up. That's just what I'm inclined to do. I look around and I see what I can make more of, and that's kind of the fun of collecting for me is you know, creating more. And I'll say too, I went through this phase of Hoya collecting that was, oh, it was something else. It was like addict level. I was obsessed with collecting every possible Hoya, especially like the ones with the really cool venation or super cool growth pattern, Calistophylla, stuff like that, Finlaysonii. But then once I had them in my care and I realized they grow so slow, it's actually hard to get them to sun stress. The growth habit again is just a little too wild for me, so really it didn't stick. Anthurium are another genus that I let go of a lot of. I love Anthurium, and it's not necessarily like that I just don't like the genus quite as much, like in the same way that I really don't care for most of the Hoya genus anymore. But with Anthurium, I would say a lot of mine I have let go of just because I didn't like their growth pattern. So the ones that grow more like a clarinervium or a crystallinum, those, I did say goodbye to a crystallinum this year. It's another one that they're gorgeous. They're absolutely gorgeous, but they just don't make me excited. I have learned this year that I love vining plants, and I love plants that allow me to propagate them relatively quickly. So let's talk about the best plants of the past year. These are plants that I could neglect for the most part and then notice, oh, I got 5 new leaves, or they never did me dirty. Number one, and this is just in no particular order, just the order that I kind of grabbed them from around the greenhouse and laid them out around me on the floor. Number one, Miss Hoya linearis. I love this plant. I have had this plant for over a year now. I've had this plant for over a year. That seems a little, I don't know how I feel about that, but I've had it for over a year. I did just say most of my Hoya I got rid of, but you're gonna notice a trend with the Hoya that are on the good list, and they are fast growers. They're fast growers. This plant it just puts out new growth constantly. I'm constantly taking cuttings from it. It's reaching for the grow light. I like using this plant as kind of like a test of whether or not a grow light is functioning properly and actually, putting out light that my plants want, because this guy will reach for it. And so my clamp lights with the GE grow bulbs, you can check out the greenhouse tour if you're interested in those. I'll link them down below too, but yeah, they're working because this guy is reaching for them, and the back side of the plant is up against a window, so I know that the light coming off of the bulbs are fairly exceptional. The other reason I like this plant is it's really easy to air layer. So air layering is when you remove a couple of leaves from a node or two, and then you can wrap moist sphagnum moss around those nodes with saran wrap or Ziploc bag or whatever you want in order to retain the moisture. And I like to do that 3 or 4 stems at a time. So I would take off all of the leaves near the nodes on the stem. That would, if I kind of held them together, that would be close to each other. So I would take off these 6 leaves, 2, 4, 6, and then wrap it in sphagnum moss and saran wrap, and it would give me some roots after just a couple weeks. So that's my favorite way to propagate it, but you can take cuttings and stick them in water. The success rate with that method has not been the greatest for me, maybe about 50–60%. So I stick to air layering when I want to propagate it, but my goodness, I love this plant and it's just gorgeous. Love it. Next up, I'm gonna stick with the same category. We're gonna talk about one more Hoya, and that's going to be my Hoya Polynora, or Fishtail Hoya. This one, again, it is such a fast grower. This plant grows so fast. I get to propagate it a lot, and I really love the way that it looks to have like a full basket or a long vine. But again, it's so fun to take cuttings and share them, propagate them. Next up, I have 2 that I'll talk about at the same time because they're both Syngonium. I use a lot of the Costa Farms pots. It's just because the brown matches the stain in the greenhouse, and so I like the way they kind of blend in. This is not a Costa Farms plant. This is a pink spot Syngonium with some very sun-bleached leaves because I put it way too close to my grow light. Oops. And a Syngonium mottled. So the reason that I love these plants is because they grow really fast. If you let them dry out, If you let them dry out too much, they're not really gonna freak out until it's been a while. So they will stop growing. They're gonna slow down a whole lot. You might not see a new leaf at all for a while, but as long as you keep them moist, they will put out like a leaf a week. It's one of those kind of plants. And that makes it really, really fun to propagate. I could fill out a pot pretty easily, but I tend to propagate them for a local shop. So that's what I enjoy doing. So that's what I do. The same goes for my pink spot. It's also called red spot, pink splash. I don't know if there's a difference in those varieties. Love this plant. Gorgeous variegation, super random, which is fun, kind of different. Again, these are super sun bleached. They're also the oldest leaves on this plant, so they are just aging. They've been through it. They've gotten too cold. They've gotten too hot, probably. They've been too close to a grow light, all that. But new growth is gorgeous. And as long as I can maintain a good distance from a grow light, these two both really, really show up with the new growth. And I love that. Another Syngonium on the list, Syngonium chiapense, or Macrophylla. I've heard it referred to as both. This plant is so surprisingly and remarkably easy. This plant, for the most part, I ignore. I don't even keep it as moist as the other two Syngonium I was talking about. It dries out almost completely in between waterings, and as you can tell, it's still, this is 2 plants in the one pot, but it's still putting out gorgeous leaves, pretty good size leaves. This is the biggest one. It's got a little bit of damage on it from being shipped way back when. It's so simple, but the shape is so pretty. It just, there's nothing competing with it, right? So like sometimes if I'm looking at something like a pink princess, which I'll talk about in a moment, but if I'm looking at something like a pink princess, it's a gorgeous plant, but there's a lot to see, right? There's the leaf shape, there's the growth habit, there's the pink, in the variegation different on every leaf. It can kind of like distract from itself. And that's not gonna happen with a plant like this. So if you want something that looks really kind of like elegant, I don't know, this kind of seems like a weird adjective to use, but this is that plant. It's just always gonna look good. It looks good in any pot, it looks good in any setting. The kind of corrugation or ribbing on the leaves is really, really nice, and it gets more intense as the leaves age. It's just a gorgeous plant, and it's so easy. Highly recommend. Next up is a Maranta, and in particular, it is this specific lemon lime Maranta. I'm a little sad right now because I did just water it, let it dry out a little bit too much, but this is a Costa Farms plant. I got this plant from Home Depot, this past summer, maybe in June. So I've had it for about 7 months now. And this plant, I have let dry out to the point of like where I picked up the pot and realized it weighed absolutely nothing. But all that happened when I accidentally did that was it lost maybe 2 leaves. So this plant, I got this full, and it has really stayed this full and consistently put out new growth for me since I've gotten it. I have propagated this plant a ton. I will just take 2 or 3 leaves at a node, like that one right there, and stick it in a vase of water, and that thing will produce leaves for me really, really quick. So again, kind of a theme here. Something I really love about plants are how propagatable they are. We're here. We have arrived to Philodendron Fest. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 philodendron to talk about, but I will say, for the most part, as I look around the room at my collection, most philodendron that I have are easy, they're hardy, they have been exposed to cold kind of accidentally here and there, and they've not totally freaked out. So when I'm thinking of beginner friendly plants, that's kind of my first thought is, okay, what kind of philodendrons, what do I have hanging around here that's a philodendron that I can pass their way, because they tend to work for everybody. First up, and in no particular order again, is my philodendron Jose Bueno. It's not a Jose Bueno, and I absolutely love the variegation on this plant. So that's the number one reason why I am obsessed with it, and it's on my best of list. But the other reason is, again, I can pretty much ignore it, and it grows so fast. I mean, with the like low level of care that I'm giving it, I don't even have it by a humidifier anymore, and it's just pumping out leaves. And so of course, with any variegated plant, for the most part, every leaf is going to be different, and that makes it really, really fun to kind of see what it's going to give you next. Along those same lines, I have my Philodendron Pink Princess. This is the one from my choosing pots and soil mix video. And so you can maybe tell that since then, and it's only been a few weeks, that this has grown quite a bit. I think it's put out 2 leaves since that video. But every leaf has variegation on it, which I really enjoy. Pink princesses have gotten insanely expensive recently, and I don't really like to comment on the price fluctuation in the plant market. One, everybody's talking about that. There's plenty of information. If you just Google it, you can read about it. 2, it's going to fluctuate almost constantly. So it's just one of those things that it comes with the territory, and you just sort of got to ride with it. I was lucky enough to get this in a trade, and I'm really, really happy that I did, because I'm super picky when it comes to Pink Princess. I've had the reverted ones, or the Burgundy Princess, a couple of times now, and I love the plant. I love the growth habit. The way that it climbs is really nice with these kind of radial leaves. Another thing I really enjoy about this particular one though, and why I'm so picky about it, is I don't necessarily love the ones that kind of put out a splash of pink and then 3 burgundy leaves and then a splash of pink. And so I'm lucky and I'm happy with this one, because every leaf has variegation. Even the ones that have just a bit, every leaf has some interest, right? And that's kind of what I enjoy about this plant, is how different every leaf is, and how there's kind of something to see on every leaf. And this one's actually really interesting because the back of the leaf is pretty heavily variegated, but I don't see it as much on the front. Maybe it'll come through later. This is a newer leaf. That's interesting. And then this one just has some tiny little specks, but I'm not going to cut it back, because if I look at the stem right here, it looks like my next leaf is gonna be a winner. So we'll see what that one does. Next up on the philodendron list, this one is another variegated plant, but it's variegated in a different kind of way. And I'm just quickly wiping the leaves off because I'm embarrassed at how dusty they are. Okay, here she is in all of her glory. Ignore the ugly Coast Farm sticker. Need to scrape those off with a razor blade. I absolutely love Florida Ghost. These, of course, were sold to me as Florida Ghost Mint, and I put those in quotes because mint ghosts are not a thing. They're not a thing. It's just kind of a term that people use to make more money on their plants. It's super rare. It's minty. It all has to do with the type of lighting that these guys are grown under. That's not to say that there are no mint variations of any plant. There's some debate over other species and whether or not you can get a mint version of them. But with the way that this plant variegates, okay, it comes out super white. Your leaves will come out super white and then they fade down to green. So the older leaves are fully green and the newer leaves are bright white. I don't have any brand new leaves right now. But this one's kind of like in the middle. It's fading down, right? This gets highlight, so I get a lot of variegation. I get a bright white leaf. That means while it's transitioning from white to green, I'm gonna get that nice minty color because it's not starting out as something like this, it's starting out bright white. So I get a long period of that in between, and that's what gives it its like mintier look. If you have a ghost and you are after that minty kind of look, then up your grow lights or put it closer to a grow light and you will see a change. It will take a couple of weeks. It may take 1 or 2 new leaves to start seeing a change in the way the leaves appear. But you will see a difference. It's pretty cool. Haley Ellen actually did a video as well on these guys and the way that they change depending on the light that they receive. So if you want to look at that, I will link her video below too. And last but not least, on my absolute winners of the past year is Philodendron Brandianum. This plant, again, is just so easy. This is 2 or 3 in one pot. I don't remember. I recently divided this for a friend and took some cuttings. I'm always cutting this plant. And so cuttability, propagatability is a theme that you've noticed today that I've mentioned a couple of times. That tends to be a really big factor for me, and whether or not I'm really gonna love a plant is how often and how well I can propagate it. These propagate really easily, just like most philodendron. Find a node, cut below it, stick that baby in water, and it's gonna have roots for you in a couple of weeks. Love that silver variegation, it's kind of splashy. These leaves will get really, really large if you give it something to climb and you stop cutting it like I do. I would recommend for anyone. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. Maybe it gave you some plants to add to your own wish list. Speaking of wish lists, my 2021 wish list will be coming up very soon. So keep an eye out this Thursday. I'll be showing you guys what's on my wish list for this year. I'm very excited to do some plant hunting. Thank you again for joining me, and if you have not already, please like and subscribe. I'm trying to reach 100 subscribers this week so that I can do a quick giveaway for a tripartitum, and I will show that in the next video as well. As long as we've reached 100 by then, we can go ahead and start the giveaway. So share with your friends, subscribe if you have not already, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!